Hi, everyone. Welcome to the webinar, Insider Event Fundraising Tips. We're so glad to have you guys here today. We're going to start right about now. We've got a good number of attendees in there, and this is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to do this webinar a little different from what we normally would do and have just a really nice conversation with benefit auctioneer Keith McLane. But first, some housekeeping items. All attendees, please be on mute throughout the broadcast. And if you have questions, type them into the question section of the toolbar, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So come up with some really great stuff that you can take from this conversation as we move along, and type them in. And our amazing producer on the back end, Lou. Say hey, Lou.
Hey, everybody.
Lou will be reading out some of our questions, and Keith and I will be taking those at the end, closer to the end. So welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the Insider Event Fundraising Tips webinar. My name is Jason Champion. I am the Director of Product Development and Marketing at Winspire. We're the largest and longest tested consignment company in the industry with over 200 plus products and work with about 15,000 nonprofits a year. And we've raised about $58 million in funding for nonprofits around the globe in our existence. But I am super excited to have a friend on with me today that I've seen in action before, Mr. Keith McLane. Keith, will you introduce yourself?
Hey, Jason, how you doing? First of all, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on this call. And Jason, thank you for setting this up and for including me here. Hello, everybody. My name is Keith McLane. My company is KLM Auctions. We are one of the nation's largest providers of pre-auction consulting services and professional benefit auctioneers. I've been doing this for coming up on 25 years now, and thrilled to be here and looking forward to this webinar.
Awesome. Thanks, Keith. We really appreciate that. Okay, so let me give you a little background. I didn't already say to you about Winspire. We're motivated and curated travel experiences for you to use in your fundraising to drive high revenue. It's a very simple process. 1, 2, 3. You're free to reserve any of our packages for your upcoming fundraising event. You can sell it as many times as you would like, and you keep all proceeds above what the nonprofit cost is. And of course, if you need to reach us, you can always get in touch with us through winspireme.com or our local number at 877-544-85555. So super excited about this, and we can tell you a little bit about Keith now.
Great. So once again, Keith McLane, KLM Auctions. So we'll do, like I said, we're probably one of the largest, we have to be one of the largest providers of pre-auction consulting and benefit auctioneers in the country. We'll perform about 225 events this year across the country, mostly a West Coast focus. We're located here in the greater San Francisco Bay Area. So most of our clients are Northern and Southern California. We do events across the country, Honolulu to New York as well. I'll perform about 70 events a year myself, and then I have a team of 8 auctioneers who perform auctions, about 150 events collectively a year. And again, I think what distinguishes us is a couple things. The number one thing I would say distinguishes us is the way that I pick my auctioneers. When I started doing this, I sort of had and this is probably, I did this part-time for 14 years, and then this has been my full-time job and all that I've been doing for the last 10 years. So when I started doing this in about full-time in about 2009, 2010, I was, I kind of trying to figure this out and would have, I'd be booked on a night, so I'd throw it over the fence to another auctioneer and see how that worked. And I quickly learned, and a lot of people still do that, but I quickly learned that was a terrible business model. Quality control was poor. I couldn't guarantee a consistent experience. So I realized I needed my own team of professional auctioneers. I needed to kiss a lot of frogs to find my princes and my princesses, kind of develop my own training program, et cetera. So now I'm proud to say that all of our auctioneers, I get to be very selective with my auctioneers. They all have, bachelor's degrees, most have master's degrees. They all have their all have or are working toward their benefit specialist designation. They've all been through my training program. They all have extensive auctioneering experience with at least 100 auctions under their belt. Extensive stage performance, Charitable Spirit. They attend seminars. So I feel like our auctioneers, are cut above a lot. And however you measure preparedness and training, they're cut above, and I think that's led to a lot of our success.
Awesome. That's great, Keith. I mean, even though you look like you're 15, you've been doing this for 20 plus years. So congratulations. What got you into auctioneering?
So that's a great question. So I started out in the real estate auction business. So I got out of college, and it was interesting. And back in the early 90s, back 2 cycles ago, when the real estate market was bad. And the real estate market is interesting. The real estate auction market, I should say, is interesting. Some places, some parts of the country, it's cycle wide. It happens in good real estate markets and bad real estate markets. On the coasts, mostly real estate auctions are very prominent in down real estate markets. And so the 2 cycles ago, when I was in the early 90s, I wanted to get into real estate. But the one thing that was happening was real estate auctions. So I ended up working for 4 years for the company that became Auction.com, which is sort of the 800-pound gorilla in the real estate auction space. So by the time I did my first auction in 95, I had seen probably 300 real estate auctions. I wasn't the auctioneer, but hopefully you see anything 300 times, you start to understand, figure out how to do it. So I was a grad student at UCLA and did my first benefit auction, and 1 led to 2, led to 4, led to 8, and did that part-time for 14 years. Then I ended up starting and selling a real estate auction company in this last real estate downturn, and then found myself in 2009 with a non-compete and figuring out what I wanted to do. And I was already doing 50 benefits a year on the side, so kind of said, hey, let's make this our full-time thing. And then realized obviously we'd need a team of auctioneers, so kind of took a jagged path, stumbling through figuring out how to make that work. But I feel really over the last 5 or 6 years we've really been humming with, the auctioneers have been with me for a long time, and I feel very, very fortunate that this is what I get to do for a living.
That's awesome. Well, you definitely have the voice for it. You just spoke 475 words in a matter of 25 seconds. So congratulations. I know
talk too much and too fast, and I'm probably no exception. So thanks for tolerating that.
It's awesome. You were very clear, and I understood everything. So we're going to get right into this even deeper now. Let's have a fun question. So what's the biggest event you've ever done, and what's the smallest event you've ever done? For all those nonprofits that are out there that are always concerned about, do we hire an auctioneer because we only have 100 people, or do we hire an auctioneer because we have 1,700 people? What do you see, and what's the biggest and smallest you've done?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So we sort of do, our goal is to be there for just about everybody. I mean, our smallest events we do, if your entire event is grossing $20,000 or $25,000, we can probably make it work. If you're much less than that, it's just going to get difficult to justify, or most likely any professional benefit auctioneer's cost. But so the smallest ones, we'll do a couple handfuls of events that are, in the $25,000, $35,000, $45,000 range, and that's gross all in from the event, not just the live and fun and need, but that's sponsorships, ticket sales, that's gross all in. The biggest events we do probably a couple handfuls as well of $1 million plus events. There aren't that, everybody always wants, points to the Napa wine auction, the Sonoma wine auction that makes $7 million and stuff, and there just aren't that many events like that out there yet. But we do our share, so we'll do probably a couple events, probably a couple handfuls, of events that gross north of $1 million. So kind of the whole range.
Nice. So it's good that you've got yourself or your team can fit into any type of organization that, and we work with those kind of organizations, from raising uniform money to little league teams going to a tournament to, the super high end celebrity driven auction. So glad that you're able to kind of fit all those gamuts and all of that. So with being able to have,
I was just going to say, it's kind of 90% the same. Whether you have got a small school auction, a small high school baseball team crab feed that's making $23,000. A lot of the same principles, apply as if you're doing a very seasoned, 1,000+ person, $1 million event on the coast or something. So,
gotcha. Yeah, same challenges on all of them. It doesn't matter how it really is. So, with being able to fit into all those gamuts, you have a wide variety of auctioneers that work for you. What makes you a little different and special than anyone else out there?
Sure. So I'd say a couple things to that. So our company motto is PCH. We like that, out here in California, it stands for Pacific Coast Highway, but for my company, it stands for Preparedness, Caring, and Humility. And I've given this a lot of thought, sort of as, kind of what kind of mindset I want from which I want my company to launch. And I've sort of identified those as the 3 most important things. Preparedness is number 1. I can't emphasize enough the importance of the auctioneer showing up prepared. I feel like I could pretty easily be a B- or a B if I showed up unprepared to an event and just had to figure it out. But if I'm going to be an A, or if one of my auctioneers is going to be an A, there's no way to do that without being prepared. And by that I mean, first and foremost, a deep understanding of the organization and the mission and where the money is going and why this is important, and sort of what is going to fire people up about this, about the cause. I can't tell you how many calls I get for a year from folks who are like, yeah, our auctioneer last year was fine, but they were a cancer research group and they start talking about patient care or something. I mean, you just can't do that. So preparedness is number one. Caring, I don't think you can fake, and I actually have ways I screen my auctioneers, for what I call charitable spirit. Do they care? Are they, gonna come across as genuine and come across as sort of a part of the organization and, sort of on the team versus just the auctioneer that flew in for for one-time thing. So caring is important. And then humility is the last thing. For some reason, a lot of people who do what I do are arrogant, and I'm not quite sure why that is. And I feel like, that's just not an effective strategy. One, that the clients don't like dealing with folks who are arrogant. But I think your audience really is not going to like that. And so I think, we always joke that our favorite words aren't sold, they're thank you, and trying to, really make people feel comfortable and important and respected and appreciated just goes an awfully long way. So I'd say one is our coming from a place of PCH, preparedness, caring, and humility. And then two is, myself, but even my auctioneers, is our energy. I think, sometimes we're not the stand behind the podium, hey, now forward to the bid, part of the buy. Nothing necessarily wrong with that, but we're more kind of what I call an energetic Christie Sotheby's style. Somebody kicked me up at 1,000. Wow, look at all the paddles. 1,250, 1,500, 17.5, 2,000 right there. With a lot of, mixing in humor and running around the room. And, and very interactive. It's tricky balance because you want to keep it moving. You don't want to make it all about you or have your shtick take over. But on the other hand, 90% of the people in any room we've ever done aren't bidding, right? Aren't bidding during the live auction. Hopefully they're bidding during the fun and need. But during a live auction, you're really going after the top 10%, of the people, A, with the, capacity, and B, with the inclination to bid in a live auction. So point is, you better be entertaining enough for the other 90% of the people in the room, so they're with you and they pay attention and kind of can view this as part of the show versus them just sitting there going, oh my God, when's this auction going to end? So I guess those are probably the key things that distinguish us.
Well, I love one thing that you said during that was what stood out to me was, instead of saying you're the winner, you said thank you. I think that is such a key element in an event, to be able to continue to thank the donors that are coming forward with purchasing these items, because one, it is also an opportunity for the nonprofit to be able to recognize potentially high net worth donors that are in the audience that they may not have before. So to go ahead and start building that bridge with you saying thank you, I think is very key. So congratulations for incorporating that in and setting yourself apart with being able to do that. That's really special. So that's awesome. So let's, because this is exciting for me. I always love to see, outside of, I know, Winspire items doing some of the best in auctions, what is the highest item you've ever sold?
Got it. So I've got a couple there, but I want to tell you one of the highest, but by a mile the most fun, dates back a couple years ago. So it's in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, which you wouldn't necessarily think is a place with a lot of money, but it's one of the largest air shows in the country. So basically, these are folks with tremendous capacity flying their jets in. If you're big way into aviation, you probably have a lot of money, and so. It's probably the largest air show in the country, and so they have a big fundraising gala as a part of this enormous air show. Over 1,000 people there, and I did this as a team with one of my auction mentors and stuff. So it was a really, really neat experience for me. Anyway, we had great things to sell. And this is the kind of auction where things sell for $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. We trust me, we don't do it. There aren't many of those auctions in the country, but benefit auctions that big. But this is kind of one of them. And so that morning, unannounced to us, we knew Harrison Ford was going to be there, but unannounced to us, that morning he says, you know what? Tell you what, he tells the organizers, I'll take somebody up in my airplane for an hour. And we'll donate that in the live auction. So think about that for a second. You get Han Solo or Indiana Jones is going to take you flying. So I don't care how wealthy you are, you can't get that. That's the kind of thing. And
that's
sort of
amazing.
Goes to what live auction times do the best. And obviously, trips, we always say trips, dinners, and unique experiences are the holy triumvirate. But when you get something like that people just literally, there's no possible way they could get unless they buy it at your auction, that's when you can really unlock value. And we can talk a little about that or ways to think about that. Anyway, that morning, Harrison Ford says, yeah, I'll donate, I'll do lunch with somebody, and they can either, I've got some planes in Santa Monica and some in Wyoming, and we'll take somebody flying for an hour. So we're pretty excited about that. So so we're about to get started. And by the way, they tell us, they're like, look, if this doesn't make at least $15,000, this is going to be embarrassing. And we're like, well, hey, I don't know what this is going to make, but we'll see. So we started off, right? Somebody kicked me off. We like starting low. It's counterintuitive, but there's a mountain of evidence that shows it's not how high you start that determines how you get. It's how much bidding activity. Right. So by starting low, you get a lot of hands in the air, and then you get wind in your sails, and you're off to the races. So anyway, it was one of those things. We started out, we're like, okay, somebody kicked me off at $5,000 just to see what happened. I have never seen that many hands in the air in my life. I'm going to say half of the paddles in the room went in the air. So it was off to the races, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. We keep going. Slows down around $60,000. So how about 62 and a half, 65,000 right there. Now 6750, 6750 over to you. We're, keep it going once, going twice. Sold $80,000. And then, by the way, and then Harrison Ford throws 2 fingers in the air. So I run over to him. I'm like, and then I put my mic down. I'm like, what's going on? He goes, why don't we do this twice? So I'm like, great. So basically, go over the second place bidder. Hey, you're the second place bidder. Would you do another one? Of course, they said yes. Sold twice, $80,000 each, made $160,000 for the organization. So that was a real highlight. And by the way, that was a few years ago. Before, it was about 2 or 3 months later, I think he had an incident. I think he had an emergency landing, and so I'm not sure what it would have sold for after that. But before that, it did really well. So that was a real highlight.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And it's
board shows up and decides to make a donation.
You do get lucky. There are sometimes I have seen that same type of situation where there's been a celebrity or someone else that has been able to step up and donate during that time, and that's great. But obviously not all organizations have the accessibility of having a celebrity-driven event, and they're depending upon obviously their demographic of where they are and what they do. So Keith, because you've done this for a while, what is your thoughts on consignment?
Sure. So I'm a big fan when used properly, and I'll highlight both parts of that. I think, first of all, not to whatever, but Winspire is spectacular. I mean, been doing this forever, and they do what they say they're going to do, and the trips are what they're purported to be, and the customer service is great. So I'm a huge Winspire fan. But basically, my big thing on consignment is it needs to be appropriate. No one wins if you have something where the cost is $2,750 and you sell it for $3,000. That's not a win for anybody. I don't want to take $3,000 out of the room and have the organization only make $250. So the couple things with consignment, the key is you need to know your audience and know your demographic. And by the way, as I alluded to earlier, I don't need the entire room to have the capacity to buy, what we're going to be selling consignment. I need about 10% of the room to have that kind of capacity. My experience has been, if your top 10%, have the capacity to bid the pricing that you're going for, you're going to be fine. And so, so number one is try to pair your auction items with the capacity, with the top 10% of the capacity of your room, so that you can, if you have something with a cost of $2,750, you can sell it for $4,000 or $4,500 or $5,000 or $5,500 and actually make some money. I think that's really, really important. It's funny, some rooms, you can walk into with a wheelbarrow full of pure gold and you're just not going to get $5,000 for anything. You could just, people aren't there to spend $5,000. And then other rooms, you absolutely do. You have your top 10% who could do that. So I think pairing, so the 2 things I was going to say about this are, one, you want to pair your consignment items with the capacity in your room. But equally importantly, my experience with consignment is, I think it's a trend that I'm seeing lately is a lot of groups, and Jason, I'd love your thoughts on this. A lot of groups are, instead of putting a lot of consignment in their events, they're doing fewer consignment items, but trying to sell them multiple times. So trying to get multiple sales off of fewer consignment items, which I think is great, because obviously it's more money with less time, right? And all, unfortunately or unfortunately, all the ways I know how to make money take time. And so if you can sell more with less time, that's obviously a win. And so, Jason, would you agree with that? Would you say that's kind of a trend, is that people are using, a lot of events are trying to, instead of focusing on let's put 6 or 7 or 8 consignment items, let's do 1, 2, or 3, but see if we can get multiple sales, per item out of those?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think that it's finding 1 or 2 special items that would speak to your demographic, and then try to sell them multiple times. One of the things too that I always talk about with consignment items, because at Winspire we provide everything that goes along with it, for the collateral, the marketing materials, everything that is to make that event successful. It's always great to start pre-promoting all those items on your Facebook page, through your social medias, because those are completely free avenues to promote the event and get preparedness for it, like you were talking about early, because not everybody can throw down for a 14-day Africa trip on a whim. They need to have had that conversation with their partner prior to showing up at the event. So pre-promotion with select items is always going to be a bigger response. And then 2, if you wanted, instead of selling it multiple times, I have seen organizations take 1 or 2 of our items and then split the committee into groups, to where the committee also works with the package that's the long weekend in New York. They have the basics of what's in there: hotel, airfare, and a unique experience. Then they start calling to add other things that they could potentially get donated to that package to continue to bump it up and make it bigger, so they can drive a high dollar value on that as well. 2, it also gives their committee members great accountability, along with feeling very part of the event. Instead of just volunteering to get a gift certificate at the nail salon, they have some serious focus, which is great. And thank you for the kind words with Winspire. We, we have 200 offerings and work with tons of nonprofits and raise a lot of money from start to finish. It's a completely curated process, and it's not on the nonprofit's back to worry how that traveler is being handled. We have an entire internal concierge team that is there for them. Our sales team is amazing, and we're really doing some fun stuff over here. New products coming out this fall, so get ready. Kind of shifting gears a little bit, Keith, technology. Technology has grown over this past couple of years. There's some leaders in the industry for what they're doing. There's some smaller companies that are doing some great things as well. It's really depending upon if you want air-conditioned seats or do you want a sunroof. I mean, what do you feel about technology at events?
Yeah, so there's kind of 2 elements to that. So it used to be back, 10 years ago, there were sort of auction management software companies that sort of manage your donations and your donors and your check-in and your check-out and your items and your bundling and your, money in and money out. And then there was mobile bidding. And there were sort of separate groups of companies. Then probably, 6, 8 years ago, they all kind of everybody started doing everything. So now by auction technology, when I refer to that, I think, these are the companies that do auction management software as well as mobile bidding. And so they kind of, the software behind it runs your whole event plus mobile bidding. So I think what we're talking about, auction management software, if your event is of any size at all, it's going to change your life. You'll save hundreds of labor hours by using auction management software versus Excel spreadsheets. The big companies, they've got this figured out. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, and the stuff just works. So I'm a big fan of auction management software, and I think most groups of any size, eventually decide to go that direction. I think what you're really asking about is mobile bidding, and that's where there's a lot of, it works great for some groups, and some groups are not as much in favor of it. So here's kind of my thinking on that. It sort of breaks down to, the 4 money-raising events at your event are live auction, silent auction, raffle, and fund a need, of course. And by the way, fund a need, for anybody who doesn't know, is the flat-out ask for cash. It goes by many names: raise the paddle, pledge, call to the heart, the ask, the appeal, the fund a scholar, fund a whatever. But it's all the same thing, which is the flat-out, getting people in the right frame of mind, then asking for cash. For the live auction, nobody does mobile bidding. I think it's a terrible mistake to say, sold, $5,500, now go enter it on your phone. Nobody does that, so that we don't really need to talk about that. Silent auction, I think it works very, very well for the right groups. If you have sort of a, I think the argument that our folks aren't tech savvy, or our folks don't have smartphones. I think that's kind of a 3-year-old argument. I think by now kind of everybody has that. And so most of my clients really like mobile bidding for the silent auction. You can start it earlier, which, you know, the mobile bidding companies claim that adds 20 to 30% to your net take. And I think that's probably an accurate range. They start the mobile bidding before the event and maybe finish up at the event. That way people who aren't even at the event can bid. A lot of advantages to mobile bidding. You know, some people still like the writing down on paper, and there's nothing wrong with that, but a lot of groups are finding they're doing a little better, you know, even net of the cost, and it's just not that expensive to add a mobile bidding contingent to your event. So mobile bidding in the silent auction for most events, I think is a fine idea. I think that's okay. I don't feel super strongly about it, but I think that's fine for events that want to do that. And so the big question becomes, is mobile bidding a good idea for the fund and need? There's basically 3 ways that groups do the fund and need, and they all sort of start the same way, which is either a video or a speaker, somebody getting up and telling an emotional tale, if you can, a first-person story of kind of their experience. This is where we always say at your auction, you want to be informational early on in the evening. Here's who we are. Here's what we do. Here's why this is important. Here's how your money is going to be, well spent on things you care deeply about. So early in your event, you want to be informational, but right before your fund and need, you want to be emotional. That's where I don't want stats and figures and I don't want to make people think. I want to make people feel right before the fund and need. So whatever your money collection mechanism is, you want a speaker or a video right before it, immediately preceding it, to get people in the right frame of mind to where they are feeling committed to the organization, and where they're feeling like they're coming together as a community to do something amazing for your mission. That's then, once you've kind of got people in that right frame of mind, there's sort of 3 ways to collect money. One is sort of the most passive, which is fill out the bid card. Now, my friends, you've just heard so and so talk about such and such. If you please fill out, give this some thought and fill out your bid card. And then basically people fill out bid cards. I'm not a huge fan of that, because there's no pressure and there's no reward. And again, you never want people to feel pressured, but a lot of the reason why people give and why why organizations have events and get people in the same room is what we call the right amount of pressure. And you just don't get that, in my opinion. There's some events where, some groups are successful with this, and some events where people might think it's a good idea. But for the most part, the fill out the bid card is not my favorite way. The second way to do it, and then sort of the newest way that frankly came on really strong 5, 6, 7 years ago, and now some groups are retreating from, is mobile bidding. And that's where, right, folks, now if you take your phones, and a couple things you got to do. First of all, you've got to get people's phones in their hands. There's a way to do this, which is why you want a professional benefit auctioneer leading this. But you get people to get their phones in their hands. You kind of walk them through click the link and click the green donate now button, kind of walk them through the steps, and then have them think about it. And then there's ways to do it. You can either do sort of the one-time, big-time ask, or you can kind of march through the levels. There's different ways to do it. But again, in some circumstances, mobile bidding for the fund and need works great. Particularly if you have an enormous room, 6, 7, 8, 900, 1,000 people, a traditional paddle raise is just going to take forever, so you might want to do mobile bidding. Other organizations where you need to bifurcate or dissect your donors into different groups, mobile bidding works really well. But for the most part, again, the problem you have if people are bidding on their phones is it's just, again, there's no pressure. You don't know if I'm bidding or if I'm checking Facebook when I put my phone in my hand, if I'm a bidder. And then there's no reward. I give you $10,000 on my phone. I guess my name scrolls, but you probably don't have the denomination with it. So nobody knows I gave $10,000. There's no glory in it for me to make a big donation. So, so again, there's no, in my opinion, and in most professional benefit auctioneers you talk to, are for a normal event with 200, 300, 400, 500 people, our favorite methodology is the traditional paddle raise. Much like 90 feet just kind of is the right amount of distance between home plate and first base. I'm not sure why, it just kind of works. The raise the paddle, it's just the right amount of pressure and the right amount of reward. It's not crushing too much pressure, but if everybody at your table's already bid, you feel a little bit of pressure to raise your paddle. And again, it's not announce your name and make a huge deal of you, which might make you feel awkward if you're, whatever. But it's enough reward. People at your table see that you're a generous person because you raised your paddle at $500 or whatever. So, so I guess that's sort of a long answer, short question. In short, I'm a fan of mobile bidding during your fund and need in certain circumstances, but for most of our clients, with let's call it normal sized auctions, I'm going to advise the raise the paddle is the preferred way to do that.
Gotcha. Awesome. I love that. Because you spoke of Fund a Need a little bit. I know some of the questions that are out there of like, where do you start your increments for the donation appeal? Do you start at the top? Do you start at the bottom and work your way up? What is your preferred method?
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of starting high and going low. I think some groups do the the kind of last man standing approach, whereas, all right, if you can donate $100, please stand up, and you get everybody to stand. Donate $250, please stand up. If you stay standing. If you donate $500, stay standing. I'm not a fan of that for a number of reasons that we could get into. I think one, I don't think you want to make your biggest donors stand for 3 minutes. Two, I think that's kind of, some people would regard that as too much pressure or too awkward. Three, collection becomes a real tricky thing. Again, you're ultimately we're asking them to write it down on their card because I'm not going to read out all the numbers. So I'm not a fan of that way. I'm a much bigger fan of starting high. We have big events that start at the 50, even the $100,000 level. Most of our events are kind of at the five or 10, but maybe $5,000 level. We have a lot of events that start at 2,500, even 1,000. And the key with funding is if you haven't done it yet, you've just got to start. I mean, you get your first one out there, and even if you're starting at $1,000, people are at your event because they want to be generous. I think right. We're always telling our clients, don't shy away from the fact that this is a fundraiser. Be proud of it. Hey, we're going to come together as a group and do something amazing here, and so kind of don't shy away from that. Put that on all your advertising and lead with that, frankly. And so people who are there want to give, even if they're giving $100, they want to donate. And so let's, that's why Fund a Need is so beautiful, because maybe someone didn't win something and you're silent. Maybe they're not, the kind of donor who's going to buy a big thing in your life, but they want to give, and it's an opportunity to be inclusive and for everybody to participate. So that's yep. Kind of our favorite way to do funding.
That's fantastic. Best answer. I appreciate that because you are at a fundraiser and people are there for a mission and they believe in your mission. So to ask them for money is not being offensive. So good job.
So I think people feel, they expect it. And by the way, if they don't expect it, that's not their fault. That's the organizers and the board's fault. Your responsibility as an organizer and a board is to let your invitees know, hey, we're here to, for whatever this organization is, we're here to, just celebrate this organization, of course, but also to raise money for a really important cause. And so, and there's subtle ways that we coach people through and how to, in fact, I just did a coaching session over the weekend, helping a client talk to their board and, getting them on board with how to, how to make the ask and get the right people there and, people with capacity there and with the understanding that, hey, the purpose of being here is not just, we're thrilled that you bought a table, but we need to, we're obviously would be thrilled, even more thrilled if you could bring folks who are, going to get behind our mission and support it. And that's on the organization and the, the executive director and the directors of development and advancement and the board to try to, make sure people show up with the right expectation.
Yep. Clear expectations is how it's the best way to have the most success when you go into an event. Okay, so last question, because you speak to tons of nonprofits a year and you work with a lot of them, and your staff works with a lot of them. Give us inside tip of best practices for this fall 2019 fundraising.
Sure. So kind of going back to extending on what we were just talking about, no one's ever asked me this, but if anyone ever said, hey, Keith, I've personally have 30 minutes to spend between now and my auction's coming up in a week and a half. I've got an extra 30 minutes. What's the most useful thing I could do with that 30 minutes? I would say, say you're a director of development and you ask me, Keith, what's the most useful thing you could do with 30 minutes worth of time? I would say, figure out who your six, I hope this isn't a derogatory term, but a lot of, Vegas casinos use whales, so I'm going to use it. Figure out who your six biggest donors are, 6 big donors are, call them up and ask them to pre-commit to making donations. And here's how it works. So if you could make 6 5-minute phone calls to 6 people who or think have capacity or donated last year, or have capacity and can afford it. Here's how the phone call goes. Jim, we're so thrilled that you and Margaret are coming to our event this Saturday. You guys were so generous last year. As you know, our event last year generated $50,000 for the XYZ, for our XYZ Foundation. With that money, we were able to do A, B, and C. We're so grateful to folks like you for helping us out with that. This year, as you know, first of all, we're thrilled you're coming to our event. But as you know, we have an even bigger goal. We're trying to raise $75,000 for Q, Z, and F. And so we were hoping that you and Margaret would give this some thought, and we're looking for an honorary donor to commit to making our leadership gift. And this is Keith speaking again. Those are my 4 favorite words on this phone call: honorary donor and leadership gift. We're hoping that you and Margaret would agree to step up as our honorary donor and commit to making our leadership gift in the amount of $5,000 or $10,000 or $2,500 or whatever the amount is. Whatever you're hoping your top amount's going to be. And then pause and see what they say. By doing this, you've done 2 things. One, they might say yes, which would be fantastic. Then you know that when the auctioneer says, who wants to come in at $10,000, right there, number 145, Joseph and Margaret, thank you so much. So one, you have a bid. So that's your best case. But even if they'll almost never say no. What they'll probably say is maybe. And what maybe, or let us talk about it, or let us think about it. But what maybe means a couple things. Maybe means one, it could mean that they're going to talk about it and they might say yes and agree to do it. But what it's really doing is letting them know that you're watching them, so that when the auctioneer ends up asking, they're not really as anonymous anymore, right? The auctioneer doesn't even have to look at them or point to them or anything, but they know that you, the director of development, asked them to make a big donation, and they know if they don't, you're going to notice. That little piece we've found really makes a huge difference. So obviously the first choice would be they pre-commit and you've got it coming. But even if you don't, I just think the act of asking, and then making them feel important, making them know that, you thought highly enough of them, ask them to be the honorary donor to make the leadership gift. And by the way, between you and me, we're hoping we have several people who have committed to being the honorary donor making the leadership gift. And, please God, have a lot of them raise their hand, right? I mean, what you want is a bunch of them, and they're all going to think, if you get multiple people, they'll think, sweet, I'm the honorary donor, and look, it made everybody else donate, which is the point. So,
right. I
think making those asks, and it's not a lot of work. In half an hour, you could probably make 5 or 6 asks. That's a bare minimum. I think it's the most useful thing you can do between now and your auction.
Cool. Thank you. Great tips to have. And thank you for having this conversation with us today. We featured KLM Auctions, Mr. Keith McLane. You always can reach him at klmauctions.com. Is there any last minute things you want to say, Keith, of how people can get in touch with you?
Yeah, so that's it. My phone number and my email address are on the website. The email is just keith@klmauctions.com. I before E except after K, so KEITH at klmauctions.com. And this has been great. I'm hoping we can take some questions here. I don't have anywhere else to go for the next little bit, so hoping we can do some questions.
Yeah, we'll turn that over to Lou. Lou, do you see any questions coming in?
Yeah, definitely. So we just got a question from David, and Keith, I'll let you start off with this one, but he pretty much asked, what is your strategy on selling multiples?
Sure, it's a great question. So that is probably my favorite part about Winspire and about Consignment in general is, they've got plenty of trips. And so there's a number of ways to do it. And I don't want to say we pioneered this way. That'd be a little but we're one of the first, I think, to start doing it this way. What often we'll do, if you have a room with the capacity, is we call it our freeze the bidding technique. And again, you want to make sure you have a professional benefit auctioneer doing this. But what we'll often do, let's say you've got a room with some nice capacity and you've got a great trip, or maybe you have a situation where you're offering, I know a lot of consignments do this, I know Winspire does as well, where you have maybe a choice of 2 or 3 or 5 trips or something, so people can get a choice of which trip that they want to take. What we'll do is, so first of all, which Jason alluded to, incredibly important, when you have a big trip, you got to get the word out, but to sell multiples in particular, you got to get the word out beforehand. I feel in the real world, people will, buy a gift card to Red Lobster or something if they like Red Lobster for $100 sight unseen. They didn't know that was going to be there that morning, but they see it and they buy it, and that's fine. I think your big trips, particularly if there's complication, if there's limits or time, blackout dates or whatever, you've got to. In the real world, I think people are a lot less likely to buy a trip or a consignment trip or a trip that has a lot of moving pieces if they don't understand it. So get the word out beforehand. However you communicate with your people, email is the most common one. Hey, by the way, here's our items that are going to be in the live auction. So one, get the word out. Then at the auction, what we do is, we get it going. So let's say we have a Winspire piece with a cost of $25, or say the cost is $27.50. and our goal, and again, this depends on the organization, but let's say, you know, we'd be pretty happy selling it for $4,000. We make $1,250 on each item. So again, the cost is $2,750. You know, the minimum we want to sell it for is $4,000. So that we, you know, on every item sold, we make over $1,000. Well, the way we might do it is what we call our freeze the bidding technique. And so that's where we kind of start, say, all right, I'm feeling lucky, somebody kicked me off, $1,000. Wow, look at all the paddles, 1,000, 1,500 right there, 2,000 to the gentleman. How about 2,500, 2,500 your way? So basically kind of keep it going, you know, look, hands going up, working it. Anybody at 4,000, 4,000 right there. How about 4,250 back, 4,250 right there. Wait, hold on one second. And we kind of have a dramatic pause and get people's attention. I think that everybody who wants to go on a beach vacation deserves to go on a beach vacation. So we're going to do something amazing right now. We're going to do something we've never done before. I'm going to freeze the bidding at $4,000. So right now, you, my friend, you just bid $4,250. I'm going to sell you one of these great beach vacations for $4,000. So you're winner number 119. $4,000, number 119. Let's give a round of applause. Clap, clap, clap. You, my friend over there, you are a second place bidder at $4,000. I'm going to give you a vacation as well. So you're going, you know, any one of these three great beach vacations as well. $4,000 to you, number 124. That's $4,000 to 124 right there. Now, I want to do something amazing. I'd like to gross, and you got to be careful and say gross. You know, if we could sell 10 of these, we would gross $40,000. You know, maybe you want to, you know, there's different ways you can say it, but I'm just using this as an example. You know, I want to gross $40,000 right here, right now. So let's see if we can get another 8 folks who want to go on vacation for $4,000. Number 126 right there, you're going on vacation, $8,000. Number 126, excuse me, $4,000. 126, $4,000 right there. Number 119, now you're going on vacation. Basically, and you call it out, you know, usually get another 4 or 5 right there, and then you end up at 8 with, say you're at 8. Folks, if we just had 2 more, we'd hit our goal. Number 119, you know, number 118 right there. You basically kind of call it out by freezing the bidding and seeing if you can hit a goal. That's we've had tremendous success with that. You know, so in this case, if you could do that, you know, 10 times you're making 12 bids, that's $12,500. But basically, one item probably takes, you know, more time than it would to sell a normal item, but it doesn't take more time to sell 2 items. So, so that's, you know, hardly any extra time. You know, 10 times the money right there.
Awesome.
And then sometimes
awesome.
You can
Great
more.
idea.
Our record for consignment, we have one of my auctioneers once sold an item 26 times. But usually, and sometimes it's 5 or 15, but usually we can get to 10.
Nice. Very good. Lou, is there any other questions?
Yeah. So I know we're hitting that hour mark pretty soon. So I'll just throw a few more questions out there. Lisa had a great question. Keith, if you maybe want to start off with this one as well. She's asking, what are the pros and cons of conducting the live auction at the standing reception versus a seated dinner?
Sure. So if you have a seated dinner, I would almost certainly do it at the seated dinner. The question we get a lot of the time is, we're not having a seated dinner. We're having our event is either standing cocktail style or maybe kind of a standing seated mix. You got some lounge chairs and things like that. So you can do it either way. We do it both ways. I got to be honest, it is easier if everybody has a seat. It's just people are focused. They're usually less chatty than if they're standing. And for God's sake, what you want to do is shut down your bar during your live auction, or at least figure out a way. You know, some groups say, hey, that's just not possible, and that's fine. We can work with that. But you can't have everybody congregating around your bar and talking. That's you. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but you'll make a lot less money if everybody's congregating around the bar. So. For standing cocktail style events, usually we encourage them just for the live and the fun, and to close the bar to get everybody focused. I mean, the reality is you must get everybody focused and the majority of people paying attention, or it's just a disaster. And that's a complaint I get a lot of the time is, our auctioneer just couldn't control the room, whatever. And so we have techniques that we use, for the live auction, but particularly the fun and need. It's a fine balance, because there's a way to get the room kind of quiet and paying attention, but you don't want to be the guy up there going, shh, excuse me, would everyone quiet down? Everybody hates that guy, so you don't want to be that guy or that gal in front of your audience all night long. But we have ways and techniques of kind of keeping the room mostly quiet and mostly focused. during the live and the fund and need, but including for standing rooms. But it is definitely easier if you could go either way on your event. It's definitely easier if everybody has a seat. Keep people focused.
Yep, I agree.
Alrighty.
And
Awesome.
the last thing I'll add, there's a lot of it says if you're doing a standing event, it's the setup of the room. Where's the stage relative to the people? If you've got a stage up front, a long skinny room, and a bar way in back, and everybody's congregated at the bar in the back, again, that's not really your people's fault. That's your fault, and frankly, your auctioneer's fault for not catching that and not saying, hey, what if we put the bar, on the long end of the rectangle instead of in the middle of the short end of the rectangle, if that makes sense, to get people, so people are at least closer to the stage. Excuse me, not the bar, the stage. Let's put the stage in the right place. Let's, kind of look at the room, and we can kind of figure that out. There's ways of setting up your room to make sure people are more focused rather than less focused.
Yep.
Cool. Awesome. So it looks like we have time for one last question. For everyone else that asked a question, we will personally follow up with you after with an email to address any questions you had. But Jason, if you want to take this one, Kate had a great question, and she asked, how do you sell these items in multiples without reserving those in advance?
So, hi, Kate. Great question. Yeah. Thanks, Kate, for your question. That's great. You can work with our event consultants, our sales team, and help guide you in the process of what you're looking for to fit your demographic to start with. And then all it is that you're able to sell that multiple times when Keith is on stage or whoever that you may have emceeing or auctioneering. They will be able to sell it multiple times, and you just tell us on Monday after your event, I sold this 9 times, and we'll send you an invoice that matches that for 9 times. So it's a very simple process. All you have to do is select it once, and you can sell it as many times as you would like.
Yeah, I want to add, Jason, Winspire, and then frankly, no reputable consignment company asks for money up front or asks you to buy the item up front. If any company ever asks you to buy the item up front, run, don't walk. That's not what you should do. So with Winspire, and really, I would argue any reputable consignment company, you don't send them a dime until you've got the sale, until the sale has been made, and or as many sales as you have been made, and you've collected the money from your patrons. Then you buy, as many of the Winspire items as you want. If someone wants money up front, I'm gonna argue they're not legitimate, and you should not work with them.
100%. I'm on the same page with you. Lou, is that it?
Yeah, that is it. There's the few other ones that are coming in. Actually, do you guys have time for one more?
Do one more.
Okay, so this is a interesting one. I think it applies to people outside of Sacramento. But somebody asked, how do you keep funded needs fresh in a city like Sacramento, where there are fundraisers all the time for so many nonprofits? Have you partnered with an MC or another entertainer, someone to tag team with? Like, what are things that you're doing to keep these events fresh?
Yeah, that's a great question, and really that's not unique to Sacramento or any town. I get that question a lot, and you're right. There's a lot of in any town, it's not entirely the same folks, but a lot of the same folks going to a number of different events. A couple things. So first of all, I think sometimes mixing up your venue can do that. Mixing up your theme can do that. I think hopefully having an auctioneer with a lot of energy and a sense of humor. It's kind of funny. Everybody always says on their website, we put the fun in fundraising, and then you see their video and they're it's kind of same old thing. So I think if you have an opportunity to watch a video of your auctioneer, that you can kind of see, okay, this guy brings the energy or this gal brings the energy and the fun, or they don't. I think too, the tricky part is that the reason everybody does the traditional paddle raise is because it works. I mean, so while there's things you can do on the edges to make it fresh, I mean, the process just flat out works. And I think, if you can, I think bringing in an MC can definitely be helpful. We love working with other MCs. We'll do it ourselves if you want us to, but I found that, if you can work with a good MC, that can be a lot of fun. And then you sort of have a back and forth on stage, which can be more engaging. And then obviously having, something after your fund and need. If you have awards or entertainment or something, you always want to put that after your fund and need and your live auction, so that people have something kind of coming up. A lot of groups make the mistake of putting their fund and need dead last in the evening, and it's 9:45, and you start asking for money. That's a terrible idea in almost all cases. So I think those are kind of some ideas you can kind of think about.
That's awesome. Well, I want to thank you, Keith, and KLM Auctions. We really appreciate the work that you do out there in the field, fighting the good fight, helping these missions raise the most money that they can at their fundraisers, where we all know that they are overworked and underpaid, and put on these events with every last ounce of love and care that they have. So thank you for being a great addition to the community of being able to really fundraise. So thank you, Keith. We really appreciate you being on here with us today.
I was just going to say, I was just going to say real quick, thank you, Jason, Lou, for having me. And again, thank you, everybody, for listening. And I know I have a lot of number of existing clients said they were going to tune in. So listening, and folks who, aren't existing clients. And by the way, even if you're not an existing client, if you ever just want to call me and have or email me and have a question or something, I'm happy to do that. I always, this is my favorite part of my business, is obviously auctioneering, but also, answering questions and talking about this kind of stuff. So if you ever have a question or anything, just feel free to call or email. I'll be more than happy to answer it, whether you're a client or not. So.
Awesome. Thanks. And, for our Winspire viewers and Keith's viewers, thank you so much for tuning in to Winspire. We are inspired auction items for nonprofit fundraising. You can always contact us through our Winspire website at winspireme.com, or give a call at 877-544-8555. So thank you very much. We appreciate it, and we look forward to talking to you soon. Have a good day.
Thanks, everybody. Have fun.
Bye-bye.